Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Squarely Speaking. I am Diane Whiddon,
And I'm Katelyn Dekle.
and we are so excited to talk to you today because today we are going to go over the web design industry financial trends survey that we ran in first quarter, second quarter-ish of this year, because that's when the idea came to us. Next year, we're going to do it a little more timely, so you'll see it earlier in the year. So it's June, but here we are with the financial trends information for 2024, and we really want to go through it with you. We want to walk through the report. And then we want to talk about how we're applying what we learn to our businesses, because I think that's where the information really becomes useful, is when you see how business owners are applying it, how they're taking the information and using it to make decisions. So yeah, so let's jump in. All right. So anything you want to say before we get started, Katelyn, or you want me to just start sharing and let's go?
Yeah, let's just do it.
All right, awesome. I'm gonna share my screen so you guys can follow along with what we're doing. All right, so this is the report, and we'll have a link for it down in the description so you guys can look at it too. But this is just the cover page where we kind of announce what we're doing and why we wanted to do it. And we have a very handy and lovely table of contents if you're in the mood for that. Um, but let's jump into the executive summary because we want to talk about why we ran this survey. Katelyn and I were at the point, it was early in the year and everybody was releasing their financial trend surveys. So Squarespace put ones, not necessarily financial trends, but like web designer trends. So Squarespace put one out and a couple other people put some out. And I just remember reading, like greedily looking at them and like wanting to consume them and then being left kind of like, oh, you didn't tell me what I really wanted to know. You didn't tell me what I really needed to know. And then Katelyn and I were talking about it at one point, and I was like, we both of us were like, why don't we just do it ourselves? We want to know the money stuff. Let's just ask the hard questions and see if anyone's willing to answer. And they were. So, anything you want to add?
No, that's exactly. I was just what is the saying? Curiosity killed the cat. Like I just wanted to know the answers to questions people hadn't asked yet.
Yeah, yeah. So we literally just made the survey, and the formatting, the creation of it was kind of funny because we did it in about a 10-hour day. We just sat down together. Literally the day we had the idea, we should just do that. And we should just come. What would we ask? Like hypothetically, what would we ask? And we started coming up with the questions, and Katelyn opened Airtable and started formulating the whole thing. And I was like, okay, all right, well, let's ask chat what else we would include. All right, let's go. And we literally just created the whole thing in one 10-hour marathon day. And then of course there were many other marathon days to create the report and market it and get it out there and the whole thing. But yeah. Okay. And so big picture insights, just overall, the things we learned is that people were hopeful, but like things like the economy and money and rising prices and things like that were just making people a little bit more hesitant to spend than they have been in past years. AI is out there. It's a part of the conversation. It's making a lot of people nervous, making some people annoyed and angry, and some people really optimistic. But AI is definitely a part of what the web design industry right now. Rates are going up slowly. So a lot of people still had plans to raise their prices, but a lot of people's pricing was still kind of low. So again, that kind of aligns with the optimism. People valued education, but we found a general reluctance to pay as much as people were willing to pay for courses in the past. And then people are just really intentional about what they're spending. And then just a really quick note about who took the survey. So this was kind of interesting. I mean, it was a lot of people in our networks, so that it was very Squarespace heavy. um, you
No
know,
surprise there.
right. And we only had I think we had 151 people total. And we were so disappointed in that. We really wanted to get 1,000. We were just convinced we would get 1,000. But people were really reluctant to share this information, even though we were like, look, it's anonymous. We're not going to collect your emails. There's no marketing on this, except we're just telling you who we are and why we care about this. But I almost got kicked out of a couple Facebook groups for trying to talk about it, get people to sign it. So, anything you want to add there about the process of creating it, or who
I
signed up
thought it
for it?
was pretty interesting to notice the difference. I think you specifically had a situation where you were trying to share it in a group that was not a Squarespace group, and
Yeah.
the reaction in those groups was different than the reaction of sharing this in an environment that was like Squarespace centric, which
Yeah.
really highlighted the community aspect in both groups and how we engage with each other and how
Yeah.
it's like more competition oriented in some and not in others. And that was like both irritating and refreshing to see the difference at the same time because it was like, "Oh, that's validating, like, we actually are nice people to each other over here," as opposed to everybody's just in a rat race in this other one, and that doesn't feel as good. So that was
Yeah.
an interesting insight that wasn't I hadn't really even considered. I mean, something I kind of already know, but hadn't really thought about how that might impact our ability to get this out there. So, anyway,
Yeah, it was really interesting to see that reflected back because I
yeah.
come from the WordPress community and I've been dabbling in Shopify, and it was really interesting to see how the different communities sort of reacted to it. And yeah, that was an interesting thing that happened too.
Mhm.
Okay, and so just really quickly, we just want to kind of walk you guys through this so that this is again the confidence piece that we were seeing. People were like a 7 out of 10 on the optimism scale, um, which we thought was kind of interesting because people were kind of scared about things like we are. I mean, Caitlin,
Yeah.
this is why we wanted this information. Is Caitlin and I both are like feeling nervous. The bots are going to take our jobs. The world is burning. Like, what's happening? And you know, so even with all of that, rising business costs, clients being less likely to pay increased prices, more competition. A lot of people were saying that the web design market is saturated. People were still optimistic, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Mhm.
And then this was the part where like almost two-thirds of people were saying they're going to increase their income this year. That's how they're feeling, and that aligns with them increasing their pricing. And I know a lot of people like kind of have just started being web designers, so they're think they're going to get bigger businesses, but we'll see. Um, and then what this means for the rest of us. Yeah, that's all that. Anything to add to any of that, Caitlin?
No, I kind of I was surprised by this mostly because of people's fears. When you look at these numbers and it says decreased income is only 7.3% of the of the expectation here compared to I was I don't know, I expected decreased income, the expectation for that to be higher than it was.
Really?
Yeah. Just because I knew, all the things that we're nervous about right now.
Hmm.
So it was like, you are afraid, but you're not really that afraid.
You're right. Afraid but hopeful.
Right,
You're right.
exactly, yeah, afraid but hopeful. So, I mean, that was kind of an interesting slash positive thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was. Okay, and so this was the part that where it really started to impact how I approached my business and some of the decisions that I've been making in my business. So when we did this question of like how much financial runway do you have? 30 like over a third of the people who answered were like 0 months. Like I'm living month to month. That's yeah, just I'm living month to month right now. And only less than 10% had 6 months plus. So, yeah, these kind of numbers, it for me, I was like, okay, so, and I think this is reflective of a lot of people right now. I mean, when eggs are a buck an egg and, we've got things like that. People are just, it's just, yeah, it's just stressful right now. And I think people are a lot more discerning when it comes to paying for even expenses for their business. That was the other thing that started it. We should mention this because the thing that really kicked this off was when Markup
Yes.
ditched their free plan and then their paid plan started at like $80 a month or something like that.
Yes, $79 a month.
We were like, "Are you high? What is happening? Oh my god!" Like, first of all, you're going to lose a ton of people, free people. So maybe that's fine with you. And obviously, this was the business model that they were wanting to create, and maybe it's working out great for them, and that's fine. But it was such a slap in the face to our industry and to us, and it felt so violent after the new year when so many people were raising their prices because it felt like at Black Friday, everybody ran all these deals, and then after Black Friday was over, everybody's like, "Okay, we're gonna up all of our pricing." Honeybook did that, like a bunch of softwares did that, and everything's a subscription right now. So through
Mhm,
no fault of your own, changing nothing in your business, all of a sudden your business expenses just went whoop, and,
mhm.
you've gotta figure out how to do that, or you've gotta hustle to get more clients just to break even, and, when markup did that, that was the straw that broke the camel's back and caused you we ranted and came up with this.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like our money isn't taking us as far, and so with that in mind, it's easy to look at this chart and say like, "Oh, well, no wonder people have 3 months
Yeah.
of runway here as the highest, barely highest percent of the group,"
Mhm.
because their dollars that they are saving, if they're saving any at all, are just not lasting as long because things are more expensive.
Yeah. 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 So, okay, and so fears and nightmares, the main things scaring everyone are getting clients. Where are all the clients? Which just tracks. That's I feel like that's just historical.
Mhm.
Why won't they pay me what I'm worth? So generally feeling a struggle to raise your prices, which I would also agree with. That's what I hear all the time. And then and then I don't, you know, imposter syndrome. I don't know what I'm doing, like that kind of thing. But these definitely echo what I hear in my groups and stuff all the time. How about you, Caitlin?
Same. That imposter question is probably the most like, am I charging enough? But what they really mean is what I'm producing worth what I'm wanting to charge?
Yeah.
They know what they want to charge based on their bills, but they also don't know how much of that is going to bills versus paying themselves versus taxes and all of that stuff. And on top of that, they don't even know if that's an acceptable number to charge.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So
real,
yeah.
for real. What was the big kicker? Because I would say both of these honestly are I would say all 3 of these actually are mindset issues. They're not even tactical. I would say all 3 of these are mindset issues. What was the big shift, in you that caused you to up your prices and finally start charging the prices you're charging now?
Actually, I think it was because I realized I was starting to feel resentful of my projects, not my clients. My clients have always been amazing, but
Mhm.
I started to realize that my take home pay essentially from each project rate was was ridiculously low. So
Mhm.
if I was charging 2 grand, maybe I'd take home $1,000 of that.
Mhm.
And that wasn't enough to feel like my business was successful.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know how to fix that until I read Profit First, and after that, then I was like, "Oh, I get it now. I've been doing this wrong for, like, a decade."
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Profit First is amazing. We'll link to that in the description too, because that was life changing. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah,
What was
yeah.
yours?
It's similar. It's a similar thing, I the funny thing about about being able to raise your prices is I think that when you start out, you're like, well, when I know enough, when I get the right
Yeah.
kind of client, when I, have the right experience, when my website looks a certain way, when I finally get portfolio things, when I finally get the testimonials, it's always these like external metrics that you're holding out there. But honestly, I have found that every single time I've raised my prices or anything like that, it's always been within me. It's always like just what you said. It's been like, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. That's it. I'm
Mhm,
just done. Like, I'm just
mhm.
not going to put up with that. And then you just stop putting up with it and you get better clients and they pay you more money. And it's like literally that's the only thing. So I don't
Yeah.
know. This wasn't necessarily going to be a teaching episode, but I feel like that's just a really
Well,
interesting.
and when the goalpost is constantly moving, then you
Yeah.
never get to the place where you actually can do the thing you wanted, like, you can't get to the goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Right.
when I perfect my website, when I know enough, like, that's so arbitrary and not a thing that you're never gonna get there and then be able to raise your prices. You have to do that first.
Yeah. 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 I would
But
agree.
again, not teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what are your biggest financial fears? Marketing effectively, undercharge. These are just some things that people put in. Undercharging as a beginner to gain clients, and then personal things. People said personal things: welcoming baby number two, not being able to generate enough income. Yeah, so and scope creep, things like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, yeah. That was just really interesting that people just didn't have a safety net that we thought people should have to feel secure, to feel secure enough to invest in things. Okay, and so what designers are prioritizing? What skills are you most financially incentivized to develop in 2025? This was really interesting too, because most people said design, like they wanted to up their design skills. SEO was second and AI was third, which was really, really interesting to me. I thought that was kind of a neat tidbit. And let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah, that's just the big thing. Anything you want to add to that, Keelan?
I am super curious to see how this breakdown changes between
Mhm,
now or when we ran this in April
mhm.
and, like, January, because
Yep.
I think this is gonna be those top 3 are gonna be flip-flopped,
Yep, I
potentially.
agree. Yep, I agree, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Okay, so client behavior in your rates. So have your clients become more sensitive in the last year? Um, Most people are kind of saying yes, about half are saying yes, the rest not sure, and then very few were saying no. So this is another thing that I've been feeling, that my one-on-one clients have not been getting more price sensitive, but the people who are buying my lower ticket things were getting way more price sensitive. Um, like I was selling more uh custom websites, so more 5, 7, 8, $9,000 projects, but I was selling fewer design days and like my lower ticket things. And so I was like, okay, I think people are just pinching their pennies a little bit.
Mhm.
And then are you raising your rates? And then yeah. And how's financial stability feeling? We compared to 12 months ago. How financially stable do you feel as a web designer? Um, Quite a few, like, when you compare this question to the first question of how optimistic you are, it becomes really interesting because twice as many people were like, "I feel worse, but I'm still hoping. I'm in there. I'm optimistic." So this was just kind of interesting too. Anything on this you wanna add, Caitlin?
No, I mean, it tracks. I think it's because, like, they probably felt slightly different at this stage of the survey than they did when at the beginning, like, and that kind of makes sense with the way things are moving up and down. It's like, "Oh, I've got this. I am awesome. I'm a badass." Then there's a new AI tool that drops, and we're like, "Crap, all the jobs are gone. Ah, it's a doomsday," and then something political happens, or the price of eggs drops, or the gas goes up, or whatever. We're just,
Right.
like, all over the place right now, I think.
Yes, 100%. Yes, I totally agree. Yeah. So this is the one that caused me to really change and rethink what I'm doing in my business. So the show me the money, this was what's your total business expense budget this year, how it breaks down. So we're curious, like how much are you willing to invest in your business? Because at one point last year, between AI tools and everything else, I was paying like $900 a month, and that didn't include contractors. That was $900 a month just in apps and software. And I was like, that's we can't. No. I'm no. This is ridiculous. I cannot do this. Like, I mean, that was just terrible. And so we wanted to know, people were saying, okay, so 31% were paying or are willing to spend between 500 and 2,500. And then the 0 to 500 was 12%, which I still think is kind of high. That's a cheap that's running lean, in my
I have
opinion.
no idea how that's possible,
All
honestly.
right. Right. That's a lean business. And maybe like if you're very, very much starting out, you don't have a VA
Yeah.
yet, you don't have help, you're not really investing in like a ton of. There's so many softwares and apps and stuff that I'm using to leverage my time, and you don't need a
Mhm.
lot of that when you start out. But
That's
still, I
true.
was like, wow, that's interesting. And then the 6% was like, I'm going to spend 15 grand a month. And I'm like, I want to work in your business. That's amazing. Go you. So kind of interesting. Oh no, for the year. Even still. Oh yeah, sorry, that was my bad. 0 to 500 for the year.
That's like ChatGPT or Claude and Squarespace. Like, that's it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
or
very lean. Yeah.
Flowdesk and Squarespace, or I mean, that's like 2 software subscriptions.
Right? Okay, so there's that. So some but still lower numbers, like really, really, really lower numbers, you know? And then
Mhm,
education investments last year versus this year. This was the other one that was really telling for me. So what was your budget for education last year? 0 to 500, 5 to 2,500, 25 to 5. And then this year, it's way lower. This was so interesting to me is that the most popular answer last year was 500 to 2,500, which makes sense. I feel like I mean, courses used to be like pretty much 2 to 3 grand, and now that's come down quite a lot, but courses are still, I think, around 1,000, 1,500, $2,000, most courses.
mhm.
And I mean courses and memberships and things like that. So any course membership, any offering like that. And then this year, we got a lot of people who are like, I'm not, and I even said that. I'm like, I'm not spending anything on education this year. I'm just flat out not doing it. So kind of
Yeah, so
interesting.
if we add that bottom, not buying anything this year, that
Mhm.
10% to that 41,
Yeah.
that's over half.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually over half. Yeah. 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 You're right. Yeah. So a real shift, I think, in the mindset of like, I want to invest in, I'll spend a lot of money on high ticket courses that are going to get me where I want to go. And it's like, no, I'm going to bootstrap it this year. That's what this feels like to me. You too?
Yeah, and I am almost wondering too if part of that is like, I've learned enough for right now, and
Yeah.
people are starting to pull out of that I don't know enough mentality.
Yeah.
Maybe partly because they're forced to at this moment,
Yeah.
but also maybe they're just realizing I've taken a lot, I haven't implemented everything. I'm gonna go back through what I've purchased or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I think there's probably a lot of factors in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that.
I mean, I've certainly done that. I've overbought probably last year, and I knew that I couldn't take all of them then, so
Mhm,
that was the goal this year. I've been
mhm.
very careful what education I've purchased this year because of that.
Yeah, it's a funny thing to the education thing is so interesting because I think it can be a defense mechanism too. You know, you want to keep buying. You don't feel good enough to start on your own, so you keep buying more education. I know we're all guilty of that. You know, like I
Mhm.
have had a course addiction myself. Um,
And
and
I
but
just
yeah,
like to learn too, so it's partly before it would have been imposter syndrome.
mhm,
Now it's like, shiny object syndrome. "Ooh, what's
yeah.
that? I wanna learn how to do that."
I wanna learn that, I wanna do that, yeah, and then now it's like, "Oh, maybe I just know enough to just make money. Maybe I
Yeah,
should just go
exactly,
for
yes.
it." I think this is my prediction for next year is that this is gonna get even more like these numbers,
Mhm,
because of AI. I think people are gonna realize that knowledge is not as scarce as it used to be, and
mhm.
this is gonna change even more, so that's gonna be interesting to see too. Okay, and so how much will designers pay for a single course? And this was, of course, the thing that really influenced me and mine because I launched my course. My founding member price, my pre-launch price was 297, and because I was just trying to prove the concept, and then I'm right now, and I moved the price up, and I'm going to move the price up again in a month. But this was the main thing: is I was like, there just aren't as many people. I mean, look at that, like these 2 numbers, I would have said this would have been the norm, like, 2 years ago,
Yeah,
right? Kinda
mhm,
interesting. And then membership budgets, like, just what people are paying monthly for memberships and things like that, you know, we kinda thought that was interesting. Same stuff, least justified software, most justified software. This was kind of interesting. Yeah,
mhm.
a lot of people didn't like Zoom.
I've
Honeybook.
heard a lot of people getting rid of Zoom this year and switching over to Google Meet,
Yeah.
like, a lot of people. I don't know if it just took us 5 years after
Mhm.
COVID to realize, "Oh, I'm already paying for this feature over there."
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
saw that pop up, not just here in the survey, it only got a couple of mentions, but in, like, in the wild. I've seen it, and I've
Yeah.
done that myself too. So that was interesting. I also saw some other software and expenses on there that I didn't expect to see that
Mhm.
weren't mentioned as often as these, but
Yeah, interesting. And the Adobe one was interesting because it's on the most justified too,
Mhm.
which is kind of funny, which makes sense. I mean, Adobe is one of those things you either love it or you hate it. If it's your go-to, you're like a magician with it. Like it's amazing. But if you're not, I mean, there's just so many other things. I mean, the fact that Canva's listed as the most justified software expense kind of says, kind of like,
Yeah,
points out Adobe's weaknesses.
I definitely think we all have a love-hate relation all of us Adobe users are like, we have to use it. It's not necessarily a love.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So that was the main thing that affected my course and offering a course. And we can talk more about that after. And then AI adoption, this was kind of interesting. The fact that there were 12% of people who were still like, I'm not likely to invest in any AI related software, and that another 12% were neutral, somewhat likely, but at least half were saying that they were going to. And then AI education was somewhat similar. I mean, a third of the people are like, I was just shocked at how high these numbers were. Just because we've talked about, I think you and I both are a little nervous about AI and what we think it's doing to our industry, but we can talk about that at the end if we want to. Um, Education and tools, the things that really sell people. This was really interesting, because if you talk to any marketer who talks to you about sales pages and CRO, they're gonna talk about, like, testimonials and success stories, but it was really demonstrating the ROI, which I know a way that you do that is through social proof, but also,
Mhm.
like, demonstrating the actual results people are gonna get. I just thought, like, wow, that's really what determines. And then price, again, like, people are really price conscious right now. So, anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, and I think, we're almost at the end. And this was just we had just had some thoughts, like recommendations for the future, and yeah, please feel free to read through all that. I think we can talk through all that. And then you can, if you're curious and you're like really want to see all the data, we have the actual results included. And so you can get in there and you can look at all the numbers and see all the questions that we asked and see what people actually said, which is kind of interesting. And then you can see us. So very fun. So yeah, so it was interesting for me to see all those results and go through that because I was not really considering, I'm like I said, I've been getting more custom clients and more of those high ticket sites. And so I was like, I'm going to go in really hard on this. And, I have a team now and I really like the people on my team. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to make that work. I'm going to make that happen. And, uh, and then we saw those results and I'm like, I think I'm leaving out a whole swath of people who would invest in me and want to learn from me or would want to work with me in some way and want to know what I know, but don't want to pay $10,000 for a custom website for their business. Like maybe they would, they're more DIY, they want to do it on their own, they're just starting out, or maybe it's like a side hustle. And I was like, okay, so what can I create? And that's what courses are for. That's what leveraged assets are for. So I started thinking membership, and then I did the test case, and that did well. So I was like, okay, but I priced it how I priced it. A lot of people were like, this should be $800, this should be $1,200, and I'm like, it will be when it's built out and it's got a name and the whole thing. But my list is still really small because I'm a one-to-one business. And I was like, let's build that. And I'm just not going to worry about the price so much first. Let's get people in the door and let's make it really robust and build it out. But all of those decisions were based on what I saw in the survey.
So tell us what your course is actually about. What you
Oh,
decided on.
so yeah, so it's called the AI Photo Factory, and it's a AI. Yeah, that was another
Right?
right. That was another thing about the course. You're right. Yeah, so it's about how to create graphics and stuff in AI. I didn't see. There's a lot of courses out there about how to create things with AI, but I didn't see anything that really focused on the practical aspects of AI, like like great, we can make, fashion models with fish heads wearing, glass suits and stuff. I mean, that's fine. I guess whatever, like go for it, do your thing. But how's that going to put revenue in my pocket? Because that's always what I'm passionate about. I mean, that's why I'm a
Yeah.
web designer. I want to help my clients make money. And so like how can I present AI and how could I teach not just AI tools, but processes, like practical processes that would help people make money and that would help people like look fancy and like all the stuff I've seen in AI, and I've talked about this before all over the place, but like there are brand photo shoots now. They're like 20,000, $30,000 photo shoots where you hire a photo shoot director and you go to a location and you've done all these like storyboards and you have all your outfit changes and all this stuff. And they take pictures not just of you, but of like chairs and your book and all these fun things. But it's like you can do all that now, but you can do all that now for like, a couple of days worth of work in an AI if you have the skills and tools. So, like with a $10 Midjourney, subscription, you can make that happen. So that was why I was like, I want to teach this stuff for that client who is like, I want these assets and I want this look and I want to look all like fancy and glam online, but I don't have $15,000 to give to Diane. So that was why I was like, okay, let's make the course. And it's I think it's well priced. I think it's like hit the market just right. So the survey helped.
Yeah, for sure. I think we were talking right before we hopped on and went live that I couldn't really think of at the time any direct correlation between what I've decided to do and the survey, but actually, in thinking about it, as I'm redesigning my site, these details are sort of living in the back of my head for what designers are looking for and how to maybe I place those things higher up in the navigation or something like that. So it is still helpful for me even in just taking out price out of it,
Mhm.
just, working on the user journey and the flow of my website, reorganizing the content because it's massive now, and
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of useful things that have come out of this. I'm so glad that we did that.
That's so interesting. How are you rethinking through the flow of your website based on what we found in the survey?
I think well, before, it was mostly geared towards one-on-one services, which is less of a focus now than it ever had been prior to, I don't know, 2023 or 4.
Mhm.
And so now I'm going back in through the lens of I really have a split audience. I need to figure out how to reorganize
Mhm.
my website so that it speaks to either person
Mhm.
for whatever they came to my website for.
Mhm.
And knowing this information from web designers is helping me structure that side of my website so that and look at resources that they might want that I'm capable of providing. I'm not going to ever be your next AI teacher or whatever, but I can teach them systems
Mhm.
for their projects, which I'm
Mhm.
pretty good at. So that helps
Mhm.
me kind of analyze what they're looking for, where their pain points are, what they're struggling with, what they're afraid of. It helps me identify better with that half of my audience, basically.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. 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 So you'll all have to let us know if
Mhm.
when you go through the survey results, and the report and everything, you'll have to let us know if you've gotten any insights that are going to make you change your pricing or change what you're doing or,
Or
um
what resonated, whatever you read that's like, "Damn,
yeah.
yeah, I was feeling that too. I'm so glad that I'm not alone."
Yeah, right. For sure. For sure. Okay, so the question that we skipped, so let's talk about this for a second. So AI and web design, what do you think?
Uh, I
She's trying to
the
be political.
well, no, I'm just my initial knee-jerk reaction is we're all screwed.
Mhm.
But the optimist in me is mostly like, "No, I refuse to believe that. I'm capable of figuring out something
Mhm.
to pivot to and adapt." And
Mhm.
so that's kind of where I'm stuck. It's like, yes,
Mhm.
it's scary.
Mhm.
I actually have to stop watching a lot of these doom and gloom interviews because it's just not productive information for my brain in order to be a productive business owner and be able to adapt and pivot as things change.
Right.
I still need to know what's going on, yes,
Yeah.
but I don't need to know all the ways that the world is going to end by next year.
Right. Right, right, right. Yeah. Yeah. Diary of a CEO just, put out an interview with the godfather of
Yeah,
AI.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
I
watched it
watched,
yet
like,
either.
the first 5 minutes and I was like, "That's all I need. Bye."
Right, yeah, it's terrifying. Um, Yeah, I think that's the hard part, right? Is anybody knowledge jobs in general are just going to be they're just going to be less and less valuable as AI takes off and provides more people with that kind of stuff, which is, it's a threat to people like us because that's our knowledge is first of all what we've spent a lifetime acquiring, but also that's what people pay us for is what we know. And if they can get the same information from chat, it's going to be a threat. So yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm nervous. I am also cautiously optimistic despite
Mhm.
all evidence. Um
'Cause
um,
we're insane.
yeah, right. I'm in the same boat as my peers. But yeah, so I'm just cautiously optimistic and I think that staying ahead, I think that learning about AI and like you're talking about staying ahead on the processes and how people are using it and what's working and that kind of stuff. You know, I think that's the smartest thing we can do and then adapt with whatever comes.
Yeah. Yep, that's all I got.
Yeah.
I don't wanna end us on a negative note there, but I mean, things are changing. I read something recently that said, "We can't control our first thought, but we can control our second." And that really is helpful for me because as an Enneagram 6, I'm a processor, planner, problem solver kind of mentality, and so that
Mhm.
tends to be negative if I let it because I'm looking for actual problems 100% of the
To
time.
solve. Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanna fix them before they're actually problems.
Yeah.
This isn't something that I can fix. It's not up to me. I have no control.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think that's the scary bit, is the lack of control there.
Mhm.
But so if I'm abiding by that, then the first thought is, "Whoa," and the second thought is, "I'm gonna just do what I can."
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
control what I can do.
Mhm.
That's it. What were you
Yeah.
gonna say?
I think that's enough. The doing
Yeah.
what we can, I think that's enough,
Yeah.
I think that's things like running the survey, reading the survey, learning from the survey, adapting to it like, "Oh, okay, let me change my business to, make sense with this new information." I mean, I think that's kind of what it is, and honestly, that's what it's always been. I mean, you
True.
and I've been doing this a really long time. I mean, I've been at building websites since 2006. I can't
Yep.
tell you how many times I've been up against it. I mean, the crash, the economy crash, the world economy crash in 2007 that really kind of hit people's like if it didn't hit them directly, it kind of hit them like in the mainstream in 2008. And so here I
Mhm.
am trying to launch this web design business. And at that, in those days, people didn't even really know what a website was for. They didn't see the benefit of it. They're like, I'm not going to pay you $800 like to build me a website. So there was that, and then there was like a few years later, there was the whole Facebook page. I don't need a website anymore. Nobody's going to have websites. Everybody's going to have a Facebook page. That's going to be everything.
Yeah.
Websites are dead. Like, what are you talking about? And and there have been tons of those. Like I remember when Parallax came out and it totally changed the way websites were laid out. I had spent all these years training myself to be a genius at the body, the sidebar, and a header and a background. Like I know how to do that beautifully. And now all of a sudden there's these big sections and then they interact and like what I'm supposed to do what? Like it was so I don't have it in my brain to learn something else. Meanwhile, the server's getting hacked all the time because of course I did WordPress. And so it just feels like in this industry, like if you're new to this industry and you're terrified about AI, like just be like, oh, this is web design. Yay. Like I'm in it now. It's just gonna change every 2 3 years and become something completely different. And you just gotta roll with it. That's tech.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of akin to we've lived in a lot of places over the years, and funnily enough, everywhere we've ever lived that is basically always like the locals are always like, "Well, if you don't like the weather here, just wait 5 minutes." They literally all say that.
Right.
And
Everywhere.
they
Yeah.
think they're special. The people in Vermont think they're special, the people in Wyoming think they're special, the people in Florida and Georgia think they're special. They all
Right.
say the same thing. I don't know why they think it's unique to their region, but it's not. And I feel like web design is very similar. If you don't like how it's moving, just wait 5 minutes because 'cause it'll be different tomorrow.
Yes. Yes. Right. Exactly. 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 Yeah. So I think there's a lot of I'm so glad we did this. I think we got a ton out of doing it, and I'm really excited to see the results for next year. We're going to run this again. We're going to start announcing it in December and maybe try and run it at the end of the year. Maybe we haven't really talked about it, but end of December, beginning of January, and then we'll get the results out earlier
Yeah,
in
and then
the
we'll have
year
stuff to
next year.
compare, and that'll get even more interesting and nerdy.
Yes, 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 right. Yeah, that's gonna be even more data. Yay, and hopefully more than 150 respondents. Hopefully people will remember it and tell their friends,
Right?
and yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. This was so much fun. Yeah, leave us questions if you have any in the comments. Take a look at the report and, yeah, let us know if it's affecting your business. We'd love to hear.
Yes, we would. Please tell.